That's outstanding. As we'll learn also from thermodynamics and our modules around building science and just high performance wall systems, is that high concentrations of moisture and temperature like to go to low. So in the winter, it's going to be actually relatively dry outside, and we're in a bathroom right now, so it's probably going to be kind of humid, and that's actually where that corner is. And so in a typical home, you might have all this warm, humid air trying to escape, where you have a lot of materials all meeting each other, where it's probably pretty air leaky. And if there's no insulation there, it's going to be cold. And just like the way the steam hits the mirrors and steams up the mirrors in our bathrooms, it's certainly going to steam up and load moisture into that exterior wall. In this case, you've really helped prevent that by you've air sealed that corner, right? We've got the gasket. You've got super insulation, so it's also not cold. So kind of those two partners, air sealing and insulation, really help to prevent that moisture leakage. And ultimately, what really degrades buildings is that moisture, either from the inside trying to escape out, or from that bulk water trying to get in. So real belt and suspenders is the way I like to think of this, between your exterior rain screen that we talked about and now this air sealing and super insulation details on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, we have a really great quality bath fan in here. Talk about the moisture that's building up in the room. If we can have a quiet and efficient fan that can remove that moisture from the home, it's more likely that people are going to use it. So we put a timer on here, and if people just, when they're going to take a shower, they hit the timer and they let that thing operate, it's going to pull the moisture out of the room and prevent it from building up. And because it's so quiet, it's not a nuisance for people, and it's very efficient, so it doesn't use a lot of energy. One other thing, as part of our Earth Advantage certification process, they actually come in at finish and they test these fans to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. What you can see sometimes is they're little dampers, kind of flappers in the fan systems, and sometimes those get stuck. And you can turn on the fan and it sounds like it's working, but if you actually measure the airflow, you can find that it's not. And if you don't have the airflow working properly in the bathroom, all that moisture we're talking about isn't being removed properly, which can be a big problem for homeowners and builders.
So that's a really great point. We're in a bathroom right now, and verification of this stuff is so important, right? Because there's plenty of bathroom fans out there that are blowing air to nowhere. Trust me, I've done a lot of remodeling in my career. And so just knowing that we've got the bathroom fan exhausting out and verified for that is really important. We talked about Earth Advantage as a certification for this home, and that's Earth Advantage Platinum, right? They, like LEED, have a very similar, precious metals certification system, right? Where Platinum's at that highest level. And my understanding is it's not just about energy efficiency, right? That we also have these other pillars in that certification program. And so some of those would be like water, for instance, right? Health. And maybe we should start talking about some of those in just a minute, but I want to energy, and we have site is another important pillar. Also have another layer of certification behind them, right? So not as many maybe are as familiar with WaterSense, but that's also a standard by which the certification is looking at. So you're going to have your WaterSense certified low flow toilets, and you're going to have aerators on your sinks in the bathroom, and in your showers, you're typically going to have some low-flow shower heads. And all of this stuff gets points, but there's also within this whole area, there's these tiers of certification. Energy Star being the energy piece, WaterSense being the water piece, and then we've got the EPA's Indoor Air Plus, which is the air quality piece. And all of that can kind of roll up into a single Earth Advantage standard. They're not mutually exclusive, and in fact, to get that certification, you actually do have some of these other certifications rolled in.
Yeah, a lot of the certifications really pair well with each other or share a lot of the same values, and I think that's for good reason.
And so really, Earth Advantage becomes kind of a critical partner in all of this and helping keep us accountable and keep Noyes accountable on all of the different steps, and because it's easy to forget, right? Like, oh, yeah, because not only are we making this zero energy ready, have all this geeky stuff with the solar, we've got this heat pumps, we've got all this complex stuff on the energy side. Oh yeah, water, that's super important too. So now I've got low flow toilets and aerators in my sinks, and oh, health, that's right, materials is an important part of health, because we were already focused on the air quality and all these other elements, right? So a bathroom, you kind of have all of that coming together. Yeah. And I think one of the important parts in a bathroom too, which is typical, is you'll have hard surfaces in a bathroom. It's pretty typical. You still do see some carpet in bathrooms, but
Not a great idea, no.
no. And so I have noticed over the years there's been a transition to less and less carpet and more hard surfaces.
I think there's a lot to why people are gravitating toward these hard surfaces. There is an element where they tend to be kind of luxurious and desirable, and so it's kind of a status thing in some ways, where you can go, well, look at all the hardwood floors I have, or how much tile I have. And so there's a piece of that. They're beautiful, but then the kind of benefit to all that I think people are missing in the aesthetics of it is that they're clean. So carpet, it kind of just traps all this stuff in it, and you can vacuum, but it's not really gonna get all of it out. But a hard surface floor, while it looks dirty faster sometimes, that's actually you just seeing the reality and being able to more efficiently clean that. So it's going to improve the indoor air quality dramatically. We use a lot of hardwood flooring on our main floor, and we use a lot of hard surface flooring in all our bathrooms and our laundry room.
So you're getting some health points in that health pillar for having those hardwood or hard surface systems. And meanwhile, you're getting points all across the board in a space like this. One of the other details that we may not really be able to see, but we might even talk about just quickly on the performance side as we jump around a little bit, is this tub. How are you managing the tub installs maybe a little bit differently from an energy performance and durability standpoint than maybe was happening 10 years ago?
Yeah, so we've talked about things that are done in sequence, and how if you do something right first, it's a lot easier than going backwards. So a tub location, and this one being a big, nice soaking tub in the master, what can end up happening is you can end up with these spaces behind them where they're not sealed, where they're not air sealed. And insulation is supposed to be in a 6-sided box with contact on all sides. And if we leave that open, it's not going to perform like it's supposed to. Air is going to be able to move through it, and you're not going to get the value that it's rated as.
So it could be a real durability problem. You got a lot of moisture, airflow, and no insulation. Sounds like a recipe for mold and condensation nightmare, right?
Yeah, so behind all of our tubs and or exterior locations similar to tubs, fireplaces are another example where you have this cavity that can kind of come in. We go and we place a rigid air barrier. So it's pre-insulated, there's insulation back there, and there's a rigid air barrier. There's a solid barrier on the inside, even though it could have been an open cavity. And we're able to seal that and ensure that we don't have those durability issues that you're mentioning. So at our tub location, all we do is before our framers frame this, we have them take a piece of OSB and they run it along the back. And the insulation contractor is able to seal around that, and then they're able to just blow the insulation in behind it. So we get a nice barrier there. Behind like a tub shower combo that the plumbers are going to install and there'd be no access to, we have a pre-insulation stage where they come in and they put some insulation up and they put a rigid board up behind that to air seal before that gets installed.
So that's super great. So before this tub goes in, essentially, you're going to have that OSB, that solid surface that's up, because when you blow in this bib insulation, you've got that netting that you put up, right? But if you put that netting up and just blew down in there without a solid surface, then that's just going to blow around the side of the tub and you may not fill the cavity at all, right? So now you've got a solid cavity, so when you blow into that netting, it's going to fill that whole cavity all the way up, and was able to be air sealed before. So another really great high performance detail, and yeah, it just seems like between that detail, this raised heel truss, a continuous, these super energy efficient quiet fans, sealed gaskets, aerators to reduce the amount of flow of water out of your showers and your sinks, low flow toilets. There's a ton of stuff just going on in this bathroom. Hard surface flooring, right? That impacts air quality. It's going to impact durability, right? It's going to impact people's comfort and ultimately health and brass tacks, energy efficiency. So yeah, a lot to be really proud of in such a small space.
Yeah, and there's even one more thing that we do with our plumbing systems to help make sure that we're delivering the water, the heated water in particular, as efficiently as possible. So there are different plumbing systems.
So you don't just run the hot water all the way around the exterior of the house?
Right. So a traditional system is called a trunk and branches system. And there's a large trunk that's then feeding off to all these little branches that come off of it to the different bathrooms and different fixtures. Now every time you try and run hot water to those spaces, you're trying to run it through that entire trunk. So not only is that going to waste a lot of water because you're filling that every time, but it's going to slow down the delivery, and people want hot water fast. So what we do is we use a modified manifold system. A manifold's a lot like when you picture an electrical panel, where each run goes exactly where it's supposed to go, kind of. But what we decided is we can combine a trunk and branches approach and a manifold approach, and we can create like mini trees, mini trunk and branch systems to different rooms. So a small pipe, because we use these low flow fixtures, a small pipe can actually deliver enough water flow to this entire bathroom. So if we run the one small line to it, and then we branch off from that, it's going to efficiently deliver that water. And one of the benefits you'll find here is if you run the water at one sink, it's gotten through most of that main line, and it's already going to be kind of preheated and ready for the other sink or the shower.
All right, Mike, so I was just in the little mechanical room right over here where I saw the beautiful Mitsubishi air handler and saw some pipes coming into it that look like they're sending out supply, heating and cooling that we saw through the ceiling below. And I noticed a big pipe that comes into it, which is right above me, which is kind of the return air to that system. Which I notice you have a bunch of insulation around that return air. And so can you tell me a little bit about that and just your attic insulation strategy real quick?
Yeah, so we talked about the benefit of having ductwork inside the house. And then we have this giant part outside of the house in the attic. So what we do this for a reason though. If you have a short run for a return air location, sometimes that can produce noise. So we want to get enough distance here that we're not going to hear the noise from the system running through that. So we run this through the attic, but then we want to make it like it's inside. So we actually use this strategy down in the garage too, where we create a false like interior. And so we created this box all around this ductwork, and we air seal that box, and we attach it to the house and separate it from the outside or the attic. And then we also wrap it in insulation. And then when we insulate the attic, we use a blown-in insulation, and we kind of pile it around there, mount it around there, and insulate around it very well. So what this gives us is a return air duct that's essentially inside. And while it's not quite as efficient as if it was completely inside, it works very well. And it brings it close enough to the conditioned space to not lose the efficiency out of it.
And really cost effectively centralize your heating and cooling system. And then your insulation levels up in the walls there, or the attic, sorry, in the ceiling. What is that?
So we use an R49 insulation level. That's a much higher level than existing homes would have. And in the Pacific Northwest, in our climate in particular, you see diminishing returns on that. So you can go up to maybe an R60, but really R49 is pretty much the sweet spot for getting a good value and good insulation amount.
And we didn't really talk about it, but the walls, what's the insulation level on those walls too?
So the exterior walls end up being an R23 insulation value with that packed in insulation in the 2x6 cavity. And it's a true R23 because of how well it's installed.
That's so great. And all of those numbers, by the way, well exceed code requirements. The walls are just a few points up, but you have a limited space. But we're getting what's required is close to about R38, and you're going all the way to R49 in that attic space. That's really fantastic. I also notice another pipe coming into your air handler here, and it had a little box on it. Looked like maybe a mechanical damper. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, we build these incredibly tight homes, right? We've talked a little bit about the air changes per hour. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the finished home. But see, these are very tight homes, and we don't have a lot of leakage coming in from outside. And homes don't need to breathe, but people do. And we have people in our homes. That's why we're building them, right? So we want to make sure that we're delivering air to the home. We actually intentionally decide where it's coming from. So we use this damper in there, and there's a fresh air duct that comes from outside, and it runs its way in, and it connects at the air handler right above the filter location. So that damper is on a timer, and this timer is programmed in to provide the proper amount of ventilation for the occupants in the home. And it automatically turns on when it needs to. It runs the air from that damper through the filter, through the ductwork, and distributes it to the rest of the home. So we're getting the air everywhere in the home that we want it to be, and we're filtering it first, which is great. You know, people with allergies are going to want that
Fresh
filtered.
filtered air from outside coming into your main duct plenum and then to being distributed throughout the entire home. And the filter on that, what is the filter level?
So we've recently started using a MERV 13 filter. The efficiency ratings of filters, you know, have a range much like other things. And you have to ensure that you get good filtration, but you still get good airflow. So a MERV 13 filter is able to take care of a lot of the dust and allergens and mold spores and things like that that could find their way through homes. And it's going to filter all those kind of common things out very well. The benefit of MERV 13 is that it also has filtration capabilities towards bacteria and viruses. It's not like a HEPA level, but it's really good.
And so you're getting close to, you know, a hospital quality air filtration in a home that can filter out viruses, pathogens, bacteria, and my understanding is also wood smoke, which, you know, in the Pacific Northwest is becoming more and more common that we all have wildfires, and being able to filter that out when there is a problem, I think is really huge. My building science mind is saying, well, if you're sending air, if you're bringing air in, aren't you pressurizing the home? Like how, and could that push moisture into the wall assemblies or something like that? So how are you dealing with that piece?
Yeah, are we blowing up the balloon with our tightly sealed house, right?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So we bring that fresh air in, and we have that timer that's controlling that, and that system also interlocked and connected to this quiet and highly efficient exhaust fan in the laundry room. So the air coming in is roughly balanced, not perfectly, but pretty close to balanced by the air going out being exhausted from that laundry room fan. Every time the timer calls for, or the system calls for fresh air coming in, stale air going out. It helps move it through the house, and it keeps us from pressurizing or depressurizing.
Awesome. So I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this because just from an air quality standpoint and health, we've got roughed in central vacuum system. There's these 2-inch lines that we can see running through the home. And that's standard for you guys, right? So you're gonna rough that in regardless of people saying they want it or not. They can always plug that in later. And what that does is constantly, you know, you go around and vacuum, any of those particulates that go up in that hose, those go outside, right? Then you're taking fresh air from outside, and if you're somehow in some remarkable way, some of that particulate made it around, it's going through a MERV 13 filter that can eliminate bacteria, viruses, pathogens, particulate matter 2.5, which we'll talk about maybe in a module someday, and ultimately bring in fresh, filtered, healthy air, distribute it through the house. You're not creating a pressure situation because you have this balanced other fan that's smart, and it's going to exhaust while it's pulling in air. This is really brilliant. And then we've got things like hard surfaces, more predominantly in the designs than we ever had before, right? And that's to try and minimize the amount of dust that can kind of accumulate below the carpet, you're saying, and then that dust, when you vacuum it, maybe you don't hit that little spot, or maybe the vacuum can't quite get that dust back out, so you stomp around and the dust gets back up in the air. So we've reduced that, and then there are things like volatile organic compounds, and I hear that you're using low or zero VOC paints on the inside of the homes, and just healthier materials. So talk a little bit about that too.
So we think a lot about the products that we're using. We use a lot of products, like you said, that are low VOC products, low VOC paints, and we're intentional to, no urea, added urea formaldehyde products in our wood products and things
Because
like
that's
that.
carcinogenic and it's pretty predominant, right? You have carcinogens in these glues that, if you don't minimize, can be a real problem.
Yeah, and any carpet or carpet pad that we use is Green Label or Green Label Plus certified. So it's also supposed to have less, volatile organic compounds and
And
be a
these
healthier.
chemicals of concern that we'll talk about in modules 2 that also, are building up in the environment and building up in our own homes. So those certifications also help verify that we've eliminated a lot of these
Yeah.
nasty toxics. And so that's pretty incredible. That's just in one pillar of health. And so I'm certain that I would want to have someone helping me check off all of those boxes just in that one thing, because I can't even remember everything we just talked about, let alone energy, which we've had a lot of conversation about, and water, which is a whole nother thing, right? And